The mockery. Tyler Hayes stormed into Brewer's Cafe with the weight of a failed merger meeting pressing down on his shoulders. His tailored Armani suit was perfectly pressed, but his expression was sharp and cutting like winter ice. He was the kind of man who expected the world to bend to his will, and it usually did. His penthouse overlooked the city from the 42nd floor. His bank account had more zeros than most people could count, and his business empire had made him a household name before he turned 35. The cafe was small and unremarkable, serving nothing but mediocre coffee and stale pastries to the working-class people of downtown, the kind of place Tyler normally avoided, but today he needed caffeine and solitude before returning to his office for another round of cutthroat negotiations. He pushed through the glass door with its worn bronze handle and immediately spotted her, Hannah Miller, the same waitress who had been serving him the same weak coffee for the past 3 years. She stood behind the counter, wearing an apron that had seen better days. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and her uniform screamed poverty and lack of ambition to him. She looked up as he approached and offered a warm smile, the kind of smile that betrayed her naivety. Tyler had never understood how someone could be so content with so little. Hannah started to move toward him, but before she could speak, Tyler rolled his eyes and leaned against the counter with deliberate arrogance. "So, you are still here," he said, his voice dripping with condescension. "I thought maybe by now you would have realized that serving coffee to strangers wasn't exactly a career path for ambitious people." The way he said ambitious made it clear he didn't think Hannah possessed any of it. Hannah flinched slightly but kept her composure. "I like my job, Tyler," she replied quietly as she began to pour his usual order, black coffee, no sugar. She'd heard variations of this comment from him before. The first time it had stung, but now she had grown somewhat accustomed to his cruelty. Tyler laughed, a sharp sound that echoed through the nearly empty cafe. "That's because you have no ambition to like anything better," he said, taking the coffee cup from her hands without thanks. "Your entire existence is defined by serving others, Miller, and honestly, I find it rather tragic that you seem content with that reality." He turned to leave but paused by the door to deliver one final jab. "A woman like you will never fit into a world like mine because you simply don't have what it takes." He left the cafe without paying, leaving Hannah standing alone with the bitter taste of his words coating her mind like the dark roast coffee she had just poured. She gripped the edge of the counter and felt something shift inside her, something that had been dormant for far too long. A quiet determination began to bloom in her chest, and she made a silent promise to herself that one day Tyler Hayes would regret every single word.
The transformation. 3 weeks had passed since that fateful afternoon, and Hannah Miller had undergone a complete metamorphosis, not just in appearance, but in spirit. The cafe owner, Marcus Winters, had seen something in her that even she had not yet recognized, and he offered her the position of manager at the newly renovated downtown location. Hannah threw herself into the role with ferocious intensity, attending business seminars at night, taking online courses, and reading everything she could about hospitality management and entrepreneurship. Her small apartment walls became covered with vision boards and motivational quotes. She was no longer just dreaming of a better life, she was building it, brick by brick. The new cafe location was nothing short of stunning. Marcus had trusted Hannah with the design decisions, and she had transformed it into an upscale yet welcoming space with reclaimed wood tables, soft lighting, and an Instagram-worthy aesthetic that attracted young professionals and entrepreneurs. The coffee menu had expanded dramatically, with offerings that ranged from traditional espresso drinks to innovative seasonal specialties. Hannah had even negotiated with local bakeries to provide fresh pastries and artisanal goods. On a Thursday evening, just as Hannah was reviewing the quarterly reports, Tyler Hayes walked through the doors of the renovated cafe. He stopped dead in his tracks. His eyes scanned the transformed space in disbelief, and then they found her. Standing behind the counter, dressed in a tailored charcoal blazer, her hair falling in elegant waves past her shoulders. Her posture was different. Her energy was different. Everything about her was different. Hannah felt his presence before she saw him. A strange calm washed over her as she watched recognition dawn on his face. She set down her pen and locked eyes with him. Her smile was knowing and controlled, not the desperate smile of someone seeking approval, but the confident smile of someone who no longer needed it. Tyler approached the counter, trying to mask his shock. Behind his eyes, she could see the wheels turning. He opened his mouth to speak, but Hannah beat him to it. Her voice was steady and professional. "Welcome to the new location, Tyler. Our menu has expanded significantly. Would you like to try something different, or will you stick with your usual black coffee, no sugar?" she asked, her tone polite but distant. Tyler stammered, searching for words. But before he could respond, the cafe door opened and a man entered who seemed to command the very air around him. Julian Blackwood wore an expensive charcoal suit that fit him like a second skin. His dark hair was perfectly styled, and his sharp features held the unmistakable mark of someone born into power. He moved through the cafe with the easy confidence of someone accustomed to getting exactly what he wanted. Julian approached the counter, and his eyes immediately found Hannah. They locked onto hers, and his expression shifted to one of intrigue and admiration. He studied her with the intensity of an art collector discovering a masterpiece. "You must be the manager here," he said, his voice smooth and cultured. "I have heard excellent things about this location. The owner, Marcus, mentioned that there was a brilliant woman running operations. I can see now that he was being modest." Hannah felt her cheeks warm under his gaze. "Thank you," she replied, her voice steady. "My name is Hannah Miller." Julian extended his hand. "A pleasure to meet you, Hannah. I am Julian Blackwood." His handshake was warm and lingered slightly longer than necessary. Tyler watched from the side, his jaw clenching visibly. Behind Tyler, a newspaper sat on a nearby table with Julian Blackwood's face on the cover. The billionaire philanthropist Julian Blackwood announces new venture focusing on empowering small business owners. "I have a proposition for you," Julian said, his eyes never leaving Hannah's. "I am launching a new initiative to invest in and mentor promising entrepreneurs. There is a gala tomorrow evening at the Metropolitan Hotel. The most influential business leaders in the city will be attending. I would very much like for you to be my guest." Tyler felt something twist inside his chest. He opened his mouth to interject, but Hannah spoke first, accepting the invitation with grace and poise. She watched as Julian's face broke into a brilliant smile. "Wonderful," he said. "I will send a car for you tomorrow at 7. Hannah felt alive for the first time in years. She had shifted from being invisible to being seen, and it felt revolutionary. As Julian left the cafe, he turned back for one last look at her, making his admiration unmistakably clear. Tyler stood frozen, his expensive coffee forgotten in his hands. The woman he had mocked was now stepping into a world he thought she could never reach, and she was doing it without him.
The gala. The following evening, Hannah stood in front of her bedroom mirror wearing a stunning emerald green gown that hugged her curves perfectly. The dress had been a splurge, an investment in herself that represented everything she had become. She'd gotten her hair professionally styled, and her makeup was flawless, but understated, elegant. When the black town car arrived, she stepped into it with the confidence of a woman who knew her worth. The Metropolitan Hotel glittered like a crown jewel at night, its ballroom filled with the city's most powerful and influential people. Chandeliers cast golden light across marble floors, and champagne flowed like water. Hannah felt a flutter of nerves, but she held her head high as Julian met her at the entrance. He looked absolutely devastating in his tailored tuxedo, and when he saw her, his face transformed with genuine admiration. "You are breathtaking," he said, taking her hand and leading her into the grand ballroom. Throughout the evening, Julian introduced her to entrepreneurs, venture capitalists, and influential business figures. He listened intently as she shared her vision for expanding the cafe brand and building a small business empire. He asked intelligent questions and treated her insights with the respect of a peer, not a subordinate. They danced and talked, and somewhere between the orchestra music and the starlight that seemed to shine from Julian's eyes, Hannah felt something shift within her.
She was no longer the invisible waitress. She was stepping into her own power, and Julian saw her completely. Meanwhile, across the city, in his penthouse office, Tyler Hayes sat in the dark, watching the live stream of the gala on his tablet. He watched as Julian placed his hand on the small of Hannah's back as they danced. He watched as she laughed at something Julian said, her entire face lighting up with joy. The realization hit him like a physical blow. He had pushed away something precious without even realizing what he had. Jealousy twisted through his chest, but beneath it was something worse, a deep and gnawing regret. His phone buzzed with a notification from the business section of the news. Julian Blackwood spotted with mysterious beauty at charity gala, romance, or business partnership. The headline made his stomach turn. He tried to focus on work, but the numbers blurred before his eyes. All he could see was Hannah's face, her transformation from the shy waitress he had mocked to the radiant woman he could not stop thinking about. Back at the gala, Julian walked Hannah out onto the hotel terrace overlooking the glittering cityscape. The night air was cool and carried the scent of gardenias. The city lights reflected in her eyes as she looked out at the view. "I have not felt this way in a long time," Julian said, his voice soft and sincere. "There is something about you, Hannah, something real and genuine that draws me in." He turned to face her and slowly reached out to gently touch her cheek. "You make me believe that the best part of my life is still ahead of me." Hannah felt tears threaten to spill over, not from sadness, but from the overwhelming sense of being valued and cherished. Julian closed the distance between them and kissed her softly and tenderly. It was a kiss that spoke of possibilities and futures and everything she had ever deserved. Tyler Hayes was now a memory, a painful reminder of her journey, but not the destination. She had reclaimed her narrative, and Julian represented everything that came next. Back in his penthouse, Tyler stared out at the city below and wondered if he had made the biggest mistake of his life by letting Hannah slip through his fingers. What started as mockery had transformed into genuine loss, and Tyler Hayes was not accustomed to losing.
The chase. 2 weeks had passed since the gala, and Hannah had become the most talked-about woman in the city's business circles. Julian had kept his word and introduced her to investors and mentors. Her cafe concept had expanded to 3 locations, and she was being courted by several major corporations wanting to partner with her vision. She was living a dream, but something felt incomplete, though she refused to acknowledge what that something might be. Julian remained attentive and charming, taking her to exclusive restaurants, private art gallery openings, and introducing her to his influential circle. He was everything a woman could want: ambitious, successful, generous, and utterly devoted to her. Yet Hannah found herself occasionally distracted by memories she wished would fade away. The way Tyler used to lean against her counter, the sharp intelligence in his eyes before the cruelty took over, the potential she had glimpsed in him before his arrogance destroyed it. Tyler Hayes, meanwhile, was spiraling in a way that alarmed even his most loyal employees and friends. He threw himself into work with a ferocity that bordered on obsession, but his heart was not in the numbers or the deals. His assistant, Margaret, finally confronted him in his office on a Friday afternoon, noting that he looked like a man who had lost everything that mattered. "Sir, you need to talk to someone," Margaret said firmly. "You have not slept in days, and you are torturing yourself. This is not like you, and frankly, it is destroying you." Tyler sat alone in his penthouse that night, something he rarely did anymore, with a bottle of expensive whiskey and his phone. He scrolled through social media and found articles about Hannah everywhere. "Hannah Miller, rising star in business world," they proclaimed. "Julian Blackwood and Hannah Miller, a power couple in the making," read another headline. He saw photos of her at events, glowing and radiant, and each image felt like a knife twisting in his chest. He finally did something he had never done before. He reached out to Marcus Winters, the cafe owner, and arranged to meet him at a quiet restaurant. Marcus arrived suspicious of Tyler's motives, but listened as Tyler poured out his regrets and his need to understand what had happened. "She was always different," Marcus told him, sipping his coffee. "Hannah had potential from day one, but she needed someone to believe in her, not someone to tear her down. You saw her as less than.
You made her feel small, and when she finally built herself up, she realized she did not need validation from men like you. She needed someone who would elevate her, not diminish her." Tyler listened, knowing that every word was true, but the truth did not ease his pain. In fact, it made everything worse because he understood exactly what he had lost, and there seemed to be no way to get it back. The following Monday, Tyler took an unprecedented action. He closed all his meetings and drove to the newest Hannah Miller Cafe location that had opened in the upscale downtown district. He sat at a corner table for hours, watching her work, watching the way she moved through the space with confidence and grace, watching the way other people responded to her energy. She was magnetic and captivating, and he had been too blind to see it. When Hannah finally spotted him, her expression went carefully neutral. She approached him professionally, as she would any customer, maintaining the distance between them like a wall. "What can I get for you, Tyler?" she asked, her voice polite but guarded. "Hannah, I need to talk to you," he said, standing up. "Please, just 5 minutes." She glanced around the cafe and then back at him. Something in his eyes told her this was different than before. This was not the arrogant Tyler she knew, but someone who appeared to be genuinely hurting and genuinely changed. "Not here," she said finally. She gestured toward the back office. "We can talk there." In the privacy of her small office, Hannah waited with her arms crossed, her protective stance clear. Tyler stood before her, looking vulnerable in a way she had never seen before. "I was wrong," he began, his voice rough with emotion. "About everything. I was wrong about you, about your potential, about your worth. I was arrogant and cruel, and I have spent every day since the gala hiding myself for it. I know I probably do not deserve your forgiveness, and I know you are happy with Julian, but I had to tell you that I see you now. I finally really see you, and I am sorry." Hannah felt her defenses beginning to crack, but she steeled herself. "You hurt me, Tyler, multiple times, and your apology does not erase that. I had to rebuild myself without you, and I am stronger for it. I do not need you to see me anymore. I see myself, and that is enough." "But what if I could be better?" he said, stepping closer. "What if I could change into someone worthy of you?" "Julian is in my life now," Hannah said firmly, and her voice did not waver. "He treats me with respect. He believes in me. He does not need to apologize for cruelty because he has never made me feel small. That is the difference between you two, and no apology can change the past." Tyler left the cafe that day knowing he had lost his chance forever, or so he thought.
Redemption and destiny. 3 months passed, and life moved forward in ways that nobody could have predicted. Julian and Anna had grown closer, and he had proposed to her at sunset on a private yacht. The ring was a stunning vintage diamond, and everyone in their social circle was celebrating the engagement. But Hannah could not shake a strange feeling of unease that she could not quite name. Julian had become increasingly possessive and controlling, dictating which events she should attend, whom she should speak with, and how she should conduct her business matters. His jealousy of her success had transformed into a need to control it. He wanted her to step back from her cafe operations and focus on being his wife, his accessory, his trophy, rather than his equal. Hannah began to see cracks in the perfect facade. She realized that while Julian had elevated her socially, he had never truly respected her independence, the way she had demanded of herself. One evening, Hannah stood in Julian's penthouse overlooking the city and felt a suffocating sensation overwhelming her. She removed the ring from her finger and set it carefully on the mantelpiece. When Julian came home and saw what she had done, his handsome face twisted with rage. "You are throwing away everything," he shouted at her. "Everyone wants to be in my life, and you are rejecting me." "That is exactly the problem," Hannah said, her voice steady. "I do not want to be in your life as a possession. I wanted a partner, someone who sees my strength and encourages it, not someone who wants to clip my wings. Julian, you wanted to rescue me, but I do not need rescuing. I need respect, and you cannot give me that."
She left his penthouse that night and returned to her small apartment, the place where her journey had truly begun. She felt liberated, but also oddly empty. She had escaped one trap, but she was uncertain about what came next. Tyler Hayes had spent the last 3 months becoming someone new. He had enrolled in therapy, addressing the arrogance and cruelty that had defined him. He had stepped back from some of his more ruthless business practices and had even started a mentorship program for young entrepreneurs. He was rebuilding himself, not for Hannah, but for himself, realizing that the person he had been was not someone he respected. He was at a charity fundraiser when he heard the news through a mutual acquaintance that Julian and Hannah had broken off their engagement. His first instinct was hope, but he pushed it down knowing that she deserved space and time. He focused instead on his own journey of redemption. Weeks later, Tyler received an invitation to a business symposium, and he was surprised to see Hannah there as a featured speaker. She took the stage with the authority of someone who had earned her place and delivered a powerful presentation about resilience, entrepreneurship, and the importance of believing in yourself. Her message was personal and profound, and watching her, Tyler felt a mixture of pride and lingering regret. After her speech, he approached her cautiously in the lobby, knowing he had no right to expect anything from her. "That was incredible," he said simply. "I am genuinely proud of you." Hannah turned, and for a moment they simply looked at each other. The past hung between them, complicated and unresolved. "I have heard that you have changed," she said finally, "Tyler. I hope it is genuine and not just another performance." "It is genuine," he replied. "I cannot undo what I did, but I can tell you that I have spent the last 3 months trying to become someone who would be worthy of your friendship, if nothing else. I do not expect forgiveness, but I wanted you to know that I see my mistakes clearly now." Hannah felt something shift inside her. She could see the sincerity in his eyes. She could sense that his transformation was real. And she realized that sometimes people did have the capacity to change. "Why are you telling me this?" she asked. "Because you deserve to know that you mattered enough to change me," Tyler said. "And because I am learning that the right thing is often harder than the easy path I took with you." Over the following months, something unexpected began to develop. Hannah and Tyler reconnected as friends, and slowly as colleagues. She began consulting with his company on diversity and mentorship initiatives, helping him build a more compassionate business culture. They spent time together, not as lovers, but as two people rebuilding a connection from scratch, without the baggage of mockery and pain. One evening, Hannah stood in Julian's penthouse overlooking the city and smiled. It was different from before. Different from the desperate attraction that had twisted between them. Different also from the cold professional courtesy that had defined their recent interactions. This was genuine. This was real. "I believe you have changed," she said. "I believe you are genuinely trying to be better. And I think we have the potential to build something meaningful together, not the way it might have happened before, but something real." Tyler reached for her hand carefully, asking permission with his eyes. She let him take it, and when he pulled her close, it felt like coming home to a place she had never been before. The ending was not a fairy tale where everything resolved perfectly. It was better. It was real. Two people who had hurt each other, learning to heal themselves first, and then learning to love each other in a healthier way. Hannah kept her cafe empire and built it into a national brand. Julian eventually married someone else who wanted the life he offered, but Hannah had discovered that the truest love story was the one she was writing with herself, and Tyler was learning to support that journey rather than overshadow it. In the end, it was not about rescue or grand gestures. It was about two people choosing to grow together, choosing to see each other completely, and choosing to build a future based on genuine respect and authentic connection. Hannah had stepped into her power, and Tyler had finally learned to honor it. Their story became one of redemption and second chances, proving that sometimes the greatest love stories are the ones we build after we have learned to love ourselves.